ZentraCast is a space to join some of Europe's most inspired leaders in original conversation. When everything in your organization, career, or even your life seems inside out, demanding change, or you simply feel that there has to be something more to life than you experience now, this is the place for those seeking the wisdom and experience of personal transformation. Together, we will explore the intersection of our material and spiritual worlds and how we align this perceived separation in our professional and private lives. Stick around. You might just walk away with the insight you seek for the best version of you to show up. Hello, dear Zentranauts. As usual, I'm Marco Houwen and your host for the next 60 minutes of engaging dialogue and for sure a lot of insights for all of us. Today, I have the immense pleasure to have an original conversation with Pascal Wiscour-Conter, a man who calls himself an expat in his native country and who dedicates his life to storytelling and improving corporate culture wherever he goes. As a Luxembourger living abroad most of his adult life, together we will dig into his vast life and business experiences and how these can be implemented in communities here and everywhere else. Hi, Pascal. How are you doing today?
Hello, Marco. How are you doing? I'm good. Thanks for inviting me.
It's a pleasure having you. Let me kick it off. I love to kick it off with the same question. I don't know if you already heard it, but my favorite question of kickoff question is, who are you? Not to be mistaken by what do you do? Just pure and simple. Who is this man you see every morning in the mirror?
That is a very good question indeed. I was going to tell you, so you are not asking me what I do, because that's very often when people network, they start by telling you what they do and they don't tell you who they are. And so I love actually to introduce myself first by even talking about the purpose. So I am someone who's trying to be useful, who tries to serve, who has discovered over the course of a career that was what makes me happy. So today I try to inspire people to connect the dots so that together we can drive and share common causes, and that makes me immensely happy.
What about the cause for yourself?
About what?
What is your cause for yourself?
For myself, so I'll tell you a story. So obviously, I've been an entrepreneur. So when you come out of the school and you're an entrepreneur, you believe that you do that for success, for money, for lots of things. And through the course of a kind of a very colorful career, I've been exposed to a number of very interesting things, including very wealthy people, very successful entrepreneurs, and being lucky enough to enter their very private spheres. So very early on, I realized, I must have been in my 30s, that, well, money success was not the important thing. There was something else. So it took some years to understand that my driver was, and it's for everyone the same thing, what makes you really feel fulfilled. So what was that? And in my particular case, I have a real thrill when I can serve others in solving problems, finding solutions, helping them drive their causes, achieve their results. And it is really exhilarating. It is something I can feel when I do that, how I am happy about it. So I just want more of that.
Supporting people to be happy.
Yes.
Makes you happy.
Yes. Yes. So it makes me happy to somehow be instrumental in helping others to achieve whatever that particular moment will be their goal. It might not be what makes them happy. It might just be what they focus on at that particular moment. So when I can, I also try to open up a little bit, which is why I say, like, I inspire people to connect the dots, which is also the idea to say, what is it really that's important in life? What makes you really happy? And perhaps sometimes it's just help them ask the right questions. And when the right questions has been asked, then you can start to help them find the good answer.
I'm curious to go into one of both of our favorite topics, but how do you link this philosophy to your philosophy about leadership? Or what is your philosophy about leadership and how do you link what you just expressed?
So I'll respond with one quote that I love, which is, the boss has the title, the leader has the people. So a leader is not a title, it's not in a hierarchy somewhere. It is just a person who's helping the people that he or she works with to become a better version of themselves. And the other quote I love is to say, be the leader that you would want to have. And I actually had a meeting this morning even with a company, and I was just saying, look, start by yourself being that leader that you need in your little group. And then it's not always that it's trickling down, it can also just be bottom up. And you may inspire your colleagues, and then that group will start to inspire maybe the group in the office nearby. And so, yes, I believe that it is really important that we understand that it's not about us. You know, you see sometimes like bosses, CEOs, managers who think it's about them telling the others what's right and how to do it. When I feel like they're supposed to serve their teams, they're there to help them feel safe in a safe space, they're there to help them understand their true potential, help them to dig into it, help them feel inspired, not just motivated with money or whatever other perks, but really that they choose to do something that they want to do because they believe in what you are translating as being your cause, your noble cause, or your vision that you feel is important. And I believe that really success is not measured by how far you go, but by how many people will go with you. And that is true at any level of a company. So we're not just saying like the big boss has 1,000 people following them. It is just on a daily basis. So yeah, I think it's not important where you are in a hierarchy, in a company, in a society, in a community. It is how you have discovered what is your purpose, how you're driven by it, and how you try to contribute with your skill sets, human and others.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And you said something which is really one of my very dear topics. It's motivation versus inspiration. And for me, it's like employees are fed up of having the yearly motivational speech or whatever every 6 months. They need actually the daily inspiration of and which the leader, and in this sense the one who creates that company, has for what he does. And they want to feel that, and they want to be part of that. And now we're talking about purpose. That creates purpose, because that is then a common vision. But this common vision is not something which so often we think we can now make a decree, do an offsite for 4 hours and then write something down. No, it is actually, especially in small and mid-sized businesses where we have founders still running the company, it is the founder's vision and inspiration for what he does, which actually ultimately has to be translated into the inspiration of everybody else in the company, which is so often forgotten from my perspective.
It's true. There's basically really an interesting aspect about motivation and inspiration. So when I'm working as a mentor with startups, or even now in my MBA course in communication, so we have these MBA students who have life experience, work experience. And when you ask what's the difference between inspiration and motivation, you get answers like, yeah, maybe one is short-term, one is long-term, or one is internal, one is external. And basically the difference is way easier than that. Motivation is when you force someone to do something because either you promise a reward or you promise some retaliation or some sort of problems in case you do not achieve it. Inspiration is when you share that vision in such a way that people decide to follow you, that they decide to give their best because they chose to, not because they've been obligated to. And that makes the whole difference. The first one, you will only get so much as you are able to push or distribute in terms of rewards. The second one is auto-generating. It's contagious. You're gonna inspire a few people who are gonna inspire more, and that's sometimes something that is hard to appreciate for traditional managers. That actually it's counterintuitive. Let go, inspire the people, delegate, do not micromanage, and the more you will empower them and guide them and give them the opportunity to do things, the more they will deliver. But it is just hard to let go. It's like as a dad, and you see your kid on a bike, you're learning, and at that moment you have to let go, and you still want to do, and you must let go, and that is not very easy because it is like kind of counterintuitive. But if you do, you have an empowered team, and that empowered team will just generate more empowered people.
Absolutely. And actually what comes up for me is studies actually show that motivation, as you describe it, so incentivation by money, by material good, by external stuff, actually is in most of the cases counterproductive.
Yeah.
Now you have that subset of sales guys who just run for the bonus, fine, but that's not your whole company. So find the sales guys who want to be incentivized and incentivize the hell out of them.
Yeah.
but don't think that your developer will function the same way.
Absolutely.
Because your developer or your service delivery team will actually probably way more motivated when they see that the product they will deliver is really giving something to their customers, that they really creating value rather than being incentivized.
Absolutely.
Financially.
If you inspire your team and you take good care of them, you're gonna inspire them in such a way that they're gonna also want to take good care of the customers. So it's actually your advantage to do that, and it is just serving the whole development of the corporation.
Yes. Actually, I grew up in a world, and probably that's the same for you. We always was told customer first.
Yeah.
And a lot of lecture and a lot of books are saying now differently. And I really sign up for that. For me, it is people in the company first, because they serve the customer. If you can say the customer first, but you then forget the one who has to bring the service to the customer. So you are actually marginalizing the work which has to be done to make the customer happy. Exactly. So even, I read that a few days ago, Branson said, people first.
and you can actually connect that thing with the motivation aspect. So if you're like propagating a communication where you say customer first, and I'm gonna incentivize my teams, and you have your customer support, and you have, for instance, your salespeople, and you incentivize them differently, what you potentially create is an internal conflict, because each team will try to achieve their goals to get this reward, and they do not care about the other team. So all of a sudden, your own players will start to play potentially against each other rather than helping each other, because they're animated by this same vision and driven to have, as a whole, everything work.
Yeah, that's how silos are created in companies. That's like you create a silo because you this famous wording saying you divide and conquer. And maybe that worked. I don't know. And I think it worked a long time ago in with other people, where people had another mindset than they have today.
Yes.
Divide and conquer.
There's an interesting theory about that, or explanation, that I really find very insightful. Is if you take you put it into a kind of a generational aspect. 100 years ago, you were looking to get a job, and you had to survive, and you had to have a job to survive, to just feed your family. So you would not discuss. You were happy to have a job. You would stay there, and you would do everything to stay there your whole life. So your driver was different, and so yes, your boss could behave differently because you had no choice. Then, like in the 50s, all of a sudden people start to have more choice, and they can choose a career. So they start to build something in a very different way, and they know that they can move on to another company regularly just to improve their career. So they have already a sense of choice that's different. And so it was about attracting people. So the incentivizing was really working well, because you would attract people to your company, and then they would move on maybe a decade later to the next one that was giving them more. Today, it's completely different. The younger generation do not have anymore that fear of losing a job. I mean, I had a conversation with a friend. She's working in a really big company in Luxembourg, and she said to me, I had someone like young just saying, I'm quitting. And I was like, okay, where are you going? She said, I don't know. what do you mean you don't know where you're going? Well, I don't know, but why are you quitting? Because I do not agree with the values of this company anymore, so I have to leave. But what will you do? I don't know. I will find. So today, younger generation have this perception that there are so many other possibilities that there's no really a limitation anymore, that the scarcity to find a job is not the reality for them anymore. So they just, this is how silent quitting can be explained as well. People just think, I'll leave because my values today are more important. And that's why leaders can no more behave like bosses of ancient times, because there they had the power and today they don't. Today it's about really building teams that function together, that are driven by a common cause, that look into the same direction to achieve something because they believe in the same values.
Absolutely, it is. For me, in this logic, retaining talent today is already difficult enough, and then we want to hire people, which we cannot find because we have exactly that phenomena you say. So it's like, well, preaching from my own church here, but that's what I will focus on. It's like inspire first, because it makes no sense to hire or to find this great talent if you are not able to keep them in your company culture. Because your company culture, let's exaggerate. Not all company cultures are toxic, but most of them are not driven for having international people coming into your company. I see that in so many startups or scale-ups, which now, yeah, great, now we have this amazing guy who joined us from I don't know where, and 9 months later he's gone just because he said, I'm not fitting in. And imagine how much money do companies leave on the floor, just going or down the drain, because they pay 20-30K for the hiring process, and they have 6-9 months, or after a year they have somebody who is leaving again. That's like, it's almost it's
the time that was lost, the money.
Unbelievable. So we talked a lot. Actually, I did research today about company culture and so on, and I found a very interesting article from 2011. So now we're talking about 12 years ago, and it was really interesting talking about how what are the drivers. And actually, it said that they made a research or study that in 11 years they had 20 companies which were compared, one on the other, one which take care of company culture, the other one not. And long story short, the ones who took care of company culture had a 4 times faster growth rate than the other ones. That's 2011. Now that was before COVID. That was before all what we are living now, before this change. I don't know how the figures are now, but I would just say I think they're double. So today it is almost impossible for a company not to think about this.
And it works inside and outside, or inwards and outwards. Like outwards, there's a very interesting, I think it's biannual survey made by Havas. So Havas is one of the biggest marketing companies in the world. And they measure when you have what they call a meaningful brand, where there are value-driven aspects to a brand, not just bragging about we're the best, we have a great product, we're so cool, look at us. But they're really engaged and they focus on their audience. Patagonia is, for instance, a great example of that. It's not about them, it's about the customers, it's about the values that they have, the causes, and they will always communicate that way. Nike, they never talk about their shoes. They always use sports stars and emphasize their achievements. It happens to be with a shoe that they do, but it's not about them. And this meaningful engagement has tremendous positives in terms of how much they sell, how much the reselling is, what the engagement with their audience is. So those brands have way higher results. The other internal aspect that is interesting, another study was conducted, I believe, it took 8 years and it must have started like 10 years or maybe 12 years ago as well. And so they went into 2,000 of companies, like 20,000 people. For 8 years they looked at it and they came up with an approach saying, well, there's basically 5 sorts of tribes, if you want, inside of those companies. The very low end, which is not often the case, is typically the gang. So people come together, they do not trust each other, but for some reason they have to be together and just survive. When you evolve, then you come to the second level where it is like, who cares? So you work in a company, no one cares about you, so you do not give a damn about anyone else, and just people are there, they do what they have to do, minimum, and they just come there for the advantages, but then not contributing. The third level, so again, an improvement, is when it's, I am better than you. There we have this competition, and that's, I believe, almost half of the companies today, where you have motivation pushing people to achieve their results, but they fight against each other. They are in a race. So it's me being better than you, having better results than you, but it's pushing the company forward nevertheless. The fourth level then is when it's we are better than them. So now you have one team working as one person, so everyone is rowing in the same rhythm in the boat, they are working together, but it's still against someone but outside, the competitor. And then the ultimate level, which is today only like 2% of the companies, and Patagonia or Airbnbs are part of those, where it's about the greater good. It's, as a company, we seek to achieve something that we believe in, and it's not about fighting against a competitor. On the contrary, the more they're going to be, the higher the chances we're going to achieve this noble cause that we believe in. And it's great if we're not. Hopefully there are even more people because the market is large enough. And there comes a sense of abundance, which is a totally different way of thinking about things.
Yeah, that's big into Simon Sinek, the infinite mindset, and it is like actually, and I actually have to admit that for myself, being not the youngest anymore, and having a long career behind me, it is one of the most difficult things to let go of is, in a sense, the competitive mindset. Always thinking almost first like, okay, how could that affect my thing? How could that and well, you talked in our preparation, you talked a lot about self-awareness, and that's where self-awareness comes in. If you see it, then it's fine, but if you don't see it, then you act on it, and that's what happens in most of the environments right now. And we are in this shift. Fortunately, we have this young generation, which I applaud so much when they just say, oh, I don't work here. Your values are shit. I will not stay in this company. I think that is so incredibly brave. It's like, I don't know, Pascal, would you have done that 30 years ago?
Well, as a matter of fact, I did it several times. I'm kind of a maverick.
Yeah.
So I walked away every time I was unhappy. I'll tell you a story. So
yeah, I'm happy. I believe you. That's our rebel. Huh? But I'll
tell you a true story that I haven't told very often. So when I graduated, I went to work for my first company, which is the only company I ever got hired. And then I became an entrepreneur. And so I worked there for 2 years. And it was not my values, not my cause. And I was also in the field that I was bored. And at some stage, I started to do something else on the side, which would eventually become my first company, what we call now a startup, which was the crazy idea coming from someone who doesn't even like boats to say, why wouldn't we register mega yachts on the Luxembourg flag? And I was on the side, and it was not a competition at all to my boss's company. He was in a totally different field. But at some stage, when he heard about it, I got called in, and he said to me, look, I give you a choice. You give me, not sell you, give me 51% of that business, and we do, or I kick you out. And I said goodbye. I just walked away. and it was the beginning of the startup. I had no money, no investors, no guarantee. It took 1 year until I had the first customer. I lost 10 kilos, but then it started and it picked up. And I've done that a few times afterwards. So all of a sudden, we moved to Monaco because that's where these customers are. Life is great and everything. And then all of a sudden, it's like, why wouldn't we go to the US? Because I believe we should develop this software that came to mind when I was managing the yacht. So again, we jumped there. And then once there in California, at some stage, we were like, why not now New York? And again, we jumped. So I was going to say, unfortunately, I am this kind of a crazy person who just jumps when I feel that I no more believe in something or it's no more aligned. And I'm always trying to. I make the choice, as sometimes I meet people here in Luxembourg who go like, they tell me their story, then they're not very happy at work. And then I go like, why don't you change? Well, the salary is good. Yeah, but maybe you can find something way more funny and it's maybe a bit less well paid. Yeah, but no, I need to pay back the house. Well, you probably will still be able to pay your house if you leave, but it's going to be nicer. Yeah, but also the level of living and everything, and then the prestige. And then I answer just one thing. You want to be happy or you want to be comfortable? And I chose to be happy. So sometimes I ended up in situations that are uncomfortable, but I choose to do it. And you were saying something very interesting and important is that you need to be lucky enough to discover that. What happened to me when I was managing those mega yachts, so all of a sudden you meet incredible people. And I mean, there's one true story, and that one is official. One day I get a phone call from New York, and there's this person who says, I'm going to come to see you for my yacht, which a few years later got sold to Bloomberg. And the man comes here and everything, and he had never been in Luxembourg, although he's in the finance world in New York and everything. And when we went to open the bank account for him, I saw everyone super nervous, like shaking. Like, who is this man? And he was the grandson of JP Morgan. And he just came once in his lifetime to see me, like 32 or so, for his yacht. Never came back. But what I'm saying is that, I mean, he never came back to Luxembourg. I would see him.
Because we didn't have free public transport at that time. Okay.
No, you would meet him in Monaco. He would come to Monaco, but he wouldn't, because these people just go to other places. But what I'm saying is that he just thought it was important enough, this baby of his, the yacht, to come and see me. And most of the customers, you came into their personal sphere. So they opened up, which means that when I would like have a sneak view into their family life, I could see the dysfunctional aspects of it. So they were very, and I'm not talking about this person, but others. And they were like really famous people. And then you would see how unhappy they were, how disconnected they were from their family, wife and kids. And they were co-living. And I was fortunate to see that when I was in my 30s, early enough that when I became a dad, I said, based on what I've seen, I do now know that my priority will always be the family. It can't be the other thing. Yes, sometimes you have to work hard. I did. I spent lots of hours for work, but I always knew that there was another thing that was more important. And when I look back now, I could have made other choices and I could be more famous, richer, have achieved more things. But then I just look back at my kids and my family, and then I am very proud and very happy. And so I think I've been very fortunate to discover that early enough so that I made a number of times choices, which then also allowed that we could like just say, you know what, we go to Monaco then, or now we go to California. And as a family, we would just go like as one people. And because there was this relationship, it was not always easy. Some things went wrong, but as a team, as a family team, we did it together, and we're still strong today.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Now, to sum this up, so my question is, what is your success formula?
It is, you need to understand first, what is your driver? They always have this phrase like, do what you love, but what is it really? So very often when I also start to work with startups and founders, that's the very first thing I ask them. And then obviously the first answers that come are money, success, this and that, prestige. And I'm like, no, those are all consequences. What is it that makes you wake up in the morning and want to do certain things? So first, you need to identify that. You mentioned Simon Sinek, but it's really the thing that I retain from the why is really that you need to really know who you really are and what is your driver. And when you understand that, then you can start also to focus on where you want to go. When I define, when I write a vision statement for businesses, for instance, when I have to define it, I explain to people it's composed of two elements. One are the core values that you believe in and you are standing in them. That's what anchors you where you stand. And then you have a noble cause. That's where you're looking into, which direction you're looking at. And these two things, you need to understand them. You need to understand, what is of such an importance that you would not want to do it if you didn't have it. That is really key for you. And some goal, something that you want to reach. Like for years, I was like, why didn't I like my first job in finance? Why did I like what I did with yachts when I'm not interested in yachts? Why did I love to develop a software when I'm not an IT person? And why did I love afterwards working with all these startups and becoming this kind of mentor slash evangelist slash business developer? It was always because it made me feel happy to contribute to making these things move forwards. So once you understood the value and you understood what your noble cause is, so you know who you really are, what your noble cause is, then you can start to implement that. But then also it probably takes the courage to do it. So in my case, it was like jumping into sometimes, I always say that's like jumping out of a plane. There's something in your bag, you still don't know if it's a parachute or a backpack. You'll find out on the way down. And so you have to believe and do that. But it is also something that you can do at your own level, in any corporation, at any level, just to say, I believe in something and I'll try to understand it. And there's this very interesting study in Europe that 60% of people in European companies are disengaged or mildly disengaged. It's more than 60. So that means there's like a third of the people that are happy doing what they do. Well, if we were able to help people to understand who they really are, what their noble cause is, and then identify a company that fits, you would have movements, of course, but probably just like making that maybe then 2/3 of the people would be happy doing what they do, which is good for the people, but is also very, very good for the businesses. So that's my utopian kind of mission now, trying to help these two elements work out for businesses and for persons.
It's not utopian in the sense that, like everything, there is a path towards this goal, and anything which is an evolvement or an evolution of what is today is already better. So it's just what we have dedicated our lives to. So I think it makes sense to not call it utopia, because our brains sometimes then create it as something we cannot attain. But every time I do a workshop in a company, or every time I know that some people think, what did this guy smoke? And other ones say, shit, I always waited for somebody explaining this, because now I really get it. And that's why I do that. And that's fine. That's why this is done. And that's totally
Yes.
yeah. So
I also believe that technology will also play a role there. I mean, now everyone's talking about AI. It's the thing. I personally believe that we have no clue yet what AI will do and will not do. Exactly like when the internet arrived, everyone thought they knew it. And then you see first for a number of years, and also maybe this time it's going to be faster than a number of years, maybe going to be a number of months, but there's going to be all sorts of iterations of things trying. I mean, Google was the number 20 in the search engine companies. There had been 19 before, but it was Google that was successful because all the 19 before tried it differently. Facebook was the 7th social media, so there were others trying things. So you never know who is going to be the winner, and you even less know how they're going to win, what they're going to be doing. So we do not know yet what AI will bring, but it will bring change, that's for sure. And so I believe that plus this change of paradigm of newer generation having different expectations of people just considering their work differently will have a very important contribution in how things will evolve, and I think probably rapidly. So yes, probably again here in 5 years and talk about that, we will see definitely huge changes in how we live, how we work, how we consider all these things.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, because I do storytelling, I get the question and like, oh God, AI was going to do the storytelling for yourself. And that's not even me saying that. A lot of experts go like, you know, storytelling will actually more make the difference between the ones who are lazy and use just technology and the machine is running in the background versus the ones who really are creative, the ones who really try to find a purposeful approach and have a meaningful way of engaging with their audiences. On the contrary, it's like if you give a calculator to an engineer, he can build bigger, nicer bridges, be more bold in how he approaches it. And it's the same thing here. AI will just empower people to do things in more powerful ways, in new ways, but it will also probably more make stand out the ones who are lazy and just think that the machine will do it for them.
when the car was invented, it was said you cannot drive. Oh no, it was with the train actually. The train can only go maximum 30 kilometers an hour because we risk to die when it goes faster.
Yes, or you go like, crazy if it's more than 6.
We'll always have these kind of stories, and then we'll see where the limits lies. Well, okay, we're all driving faster than 30 kilometers an hour, fortunately. So
it's about getting used to, I mean, getting used to the change and then appreciating how it's gonna work. But even there's a very interesting thing, like why is now everyone afraid of AI, and or not everyone's afraid, but some, and why was this letter to say stop for 6 months or 12 months before we go on? The key element actually behind is not a software issue, it's a hardware issue, because there's a new processor NVIDIA is now introducing. So before they had one, I think, called A100, now it's the H100, and they can build way more powerful computers now and data centers, you know that very well. So the calculators now are going to be extremely more powerful. I believe that they can times 20, times 40 the calculation power, so AI will be able to go really faster. And the comparison that I liked is like, think of AI like a toddler that has the power of Hulk. So he just wants to play, takes your hand and he can just destroy your hand. And in this particular case, it takes just the time to train AI, because if you show them the bad side of humanity, that's what AI will produce. If you show it the good side of humanity, it's going to go into that direction. And now the whole idea is to say, how can we train quickly enough this toddler so that it becomes an adolescent who already understands better good and bad, because we've been able to train them fast enough before the technology goes so fast and just incrementals.
Yeah, we'll do another conversation about AI. Yeah, it is really something very fast, and actually, as so often when something new starts, everybody becomes an expert. Nobody is, or very few are.
Yes.
So it is difficult. It is a difficult topic. But let me ask you a question. When we prepared here for this interview, you talked about persistence and optimism as your biggest strengths.
Yes.
Can you tell me how this persistence and optimism shows up in your life?
Through resilience. So I tell you, I've been jumping ship several times, or out of the plane, I should say, and then finding out if it was a parachute I had in my back or not. And so sometimes there was a crash landing, and then when you fall, the thing is to first understand why you fell, and then to understand, again, driven by your purpose and everything, where this should go on, what you should do. And so I just came to realize that somehow my cabling, if I can say so, is done in such a way that I tend to get up again, tend to look at the positive side of things, realize that you do not always see on the spot why this might somehow lead to something positive eventually, and that you just have to go through it. So I will not give up, because I just think, okay, it's not being stubborn. I mean, you just keep going, but you probably have to adjust course, but you keep going, and you just believe that at some stage you will be able to turn around, look back and realize, oh yeah, that bad thing that happened to me now actually has had me change course into one direction, which leads me now into a new opportunity. And so that's the persistent part, and optimist, because yeah, every time just believing that whatever's going to be in it for you, there's going to be a way to take away something positive. And it's from my childhood back there. I mean, it was not a very easy one. It was certainly not a fun one. So I just learned very early age as a survival mode. I remember when I was a young teenager, even like when I was 10 or so, I would just ask myself one simple question: might I die from what's happening right now in front of me? And the answer was no. It will not make me die. So I can overcome it. Yeah.
a basic approach. I love it.
I was 10.
Well, that's really powerful, actually. That's actually one of these beliefs which makes you drive really forward. So it made me understand well who you are and who I know you are. So you gave me a perfect segue now to my next question, which actually is something we don't talk about in entrepreneurship, and I really feel that it is necessary we talk more and more about that. Is what do you consider as your biggest failure in your life, in your business, if any? And what did you learn? Because just to give, it's so important that young entrepreneurs know that even the successful ones had failures. Even the successful ones did not always have everything served on a platter. No one actually have it, even so it looks like that, and we portray it like that. Huh? I'm guilty as charged on that one, at least for a big part of my life, where I never talked about what did go wrong. So yeah, great, amazing, but no, what? So back to you. What do you consider
Before,
failure?
like obviously, everyone has failures. We all have them. There's not one person that doesn't have them. Like I told you before, I saw examples of extremely successful entrepreneurs, but then you would see that the failure was maybe on a personal level. But even in a successful business life, things work and some don't. So that I could list you many things that went wrong. I think what's more important is that I feel today that I have every time something went wrong, that's when I learned much more than when it went right. Because when something goes right, you tend to believe that it's because you're so good and so smart, and you tend to not that much consider that you might be lucky or there might be other people involved. And there's not just you, but there's a number of things that make the success become a success. Versus when you fail, you tend more to really introspect and go like, what did I do wrong? And then you might more analyze really post-mortem what happened. So I believe that it's more insightful when you are in a hard place and something went wrong. You probably are more open to thinking what happened, and maybe you're more honest with yourself to try to understand. Then comes again the optimistic part that you must be able then to learn from it, of course, to say, okay, and yeah, so yeah, I will give you one thing. So when I think back to it, it's over a long period of time that I had a failure. So it's not like one. I could name you things that like something happened went wrong, but I've realized that over many years I was guilty of doubting myself. And if you doubt yourself, you start to overcompensate for it. So you either overachieve, overdo, or you focus on showing, and you forget, like I mentioned before, who you really are. So very often I have tried to blend in, to be the person that I thought people saw in me or wanted me to be, and that's an error. That is something that I have definitely stopped doing, because sometimes the temptation is that you will do that because you feel like there's an advantage to it, or maybe it's this what you have to do to get the job, to that, to get this contract, this and that. And today I prefer to not get it right away and I know it already, by being just myself, by being completely genuine and not trying to adjust, because eventually it goes wrong. So see, it's rather than give you a list of things, but I mean, when I
No,
went to
no, no.
California, it
Thank you.
really went well. I mean, California went really bad because for multiple reasons, my co-founder left for crazy reasons, doing crazy things. But I was stuck alone in California without health insurance, with a burnout, and I became blind on one eye for a few days. So you start to freak out, and then again, the resilience comes. So yes, I should have done differently. I've learned a lot from there. It opened up actually towards understanding who I really was and doing the things that I really love doing. So it was positive in the end. But the more constant one, really, like from as far as I can remember as a teenager to not so long ago, was to too much try to blend in, and you lose yourself if you do that.
What would be the one thing you would say to an entrepreneur who just had like the smackdown of his life. We know that he will get up. We know all that. But who is like at the lowest of the wave? What is it we would give him as an insight?
The first thing is like say, look, this hurts really bad. We know it. You have to accept the pain. It's what they say. For instance, I remember when my wife was pregnant and we got the 2 babies, that she was using sophrology notably, and one of the key learnings was to say accept the pain. So I think the first thing is that you have to accept the pain and just live it through. It's gonna go away. It may last a few days, a few weeks, a few months, maybe, but you're gonna overcome it. So go through it. The second one is do not care about what the others think, because that's not important now. What's important now is what you think, how you feel, what you can already start to learn from it. And then eventually you'll be able probably to because if you do it now, you will just beat yourself up. You will even go further down, which is not what you need. You can still do this autopsy later on, and then maybe you will be way less hard on you, and you probably also be more accurate in the evaluation of it. And then, yes, go on. Contingency plan, just manage the daily things depending on what the consequences are when you fell. If there are like materialistic consequences, how can you solve that right away now so that you just have the minimum level of surviving, so that you can eat, you can live, you have what you need to. If that is not an issue, then it's already more comfortable to say, okay, then it's just more an ego thing, and it hurts, and that will also go away. But yeah,
that's really interesting what you said at the end, because I agree with everything, and at the end say it's an ego thing, and I think that is the from my experience for myself and with people I coach, is very often it's just the ego thing you attach to, which is absolutely not important. And it hurts me always tremendously when I see, and I had that very recently, when I see a founder with a great story, a great thing, who attaches to unimportant things with the ego and makes it the biggest story of the company, and actually risks the company with a stupid thing. And it could be done like that. Just accept and let go of the ego.
yes.
It is, and it happens more often than we think, because let's face it, we are all as entrepreneurs. We're all recovering egomaniacs, huh? So some maybe not. Let's not say 100%. Let's say a lot of 85-90%. That's what we are.
Yes.
Because that's why we wanted. We changed the world. We are we have this amazing. We think that we can. I can. You can. We can do that. But in essence, it is the most toughest thing as an entrepreneur when you get smacked down, is to let go of that ego. I remember when I lost the way I thought one of my companies had to go and didn't go that way. I needed a year to get out of that. To get out of that thinking. And when I look back now and I look at it and I say, Marco, you could have gone letting go of that in 5 minutes. No.
Yes.
We know that, or I know that now, but it took me the time it took me. Now, but it is really, really important for me is now I see that as a huge opportunity I got.
Mm-hmm.
Also having to go through that, the hurt became suffering. Because this suffering gave me so much, and I learned so much from it, and it drove me into a direction I really love to be now. So it is very powerful. Now, at the moment, yeah, let go of the ego. Okay, well, that's another story we can discuss next time.
But it's interesting what you're saying, because I mentioned, so I've seen a lot of successful entrepreneurs in my work initially, but then also as a mentor or advisor, and I come to categorize them in 3 categories now. You have the ideal case, that's the ones I love to work with, that are purpose driven. So they really have a cause, something they believe in, and that's what is driving them. And that's the ones who have the easiest to define their vision and the mission of the company and communicate it. And you just help them a little bit on how to articulate the storytelling, and it's a smooth going. The second one, which is the one you see very often, is, I call it greed driven. So that's back to the example of a startup. It's when they think already of the exit. Then that means you're building something to cash, but you're not building really to solve a problem. You just identify somewhere an opportunity and you want to do it, and you will squeeze wherever you have to, and you try to make it work so that you can at some stage just sell it, and then you made your money. Good. And I mean, some are really excellent at that and very good. But the ones that I found, the more, how could I say, that the most puzzling are the ego-driven ones. Because someone who's greed-driven is very rational. There's still a plan, there's a method as to what will be done and how
you can measure that. You can measure somebody who wants money.
Exactly. So you can see like the steps and the milestones. You could nearly have a roadmap. You can say this is going to go here. But ego-driven, there's sometimes no logic anymore to it, because ego is, I mean, it's profoundly human. It's just whatever is ego-driven is not rational. And so even if it's being rationalized, because then, we use our neocortex to rationalize something that was decided by our emotional center in our limbic system, which we do not control. But you convince yourself that this is right because I feel it is like that. Those are the ones that are hard to even convince that there is a problem. So often it's really like you cannot even explain the solution to people who do not see that there is a question to be asked. So your work will first be to try to even get them somewhere near to asking questions, and then literally getting closer and closer to that big question. And then you can start to approach that there might be a solution to it. But that can be a lot of work.
Yeah, actually, that's what I faced with these guys. We'll see. Interesting. No, I like that. I'm not a fan of categorization, but I like this one. It makes it's clear. It's clear. Let's use the last few minutes to talk about your passion, which is community. And now, when we talk about community, we can talk about as much as having a community living together on the camping ground and having shamanic experiences every night, or we can talk about communities in companies and so on. Well, so I would love to understand, because you hinted to it at the very beginning of our talk here. You hinted to the tribal approach in company. How do you see communities in companies? How do you see them not becoming silos? And how do you create healthy communities in companies?
Okay, so first question. So communities, why? Well, communities obviously are everywhere, and it goes back to even like when we were still cave people. That to survive we had to be a community, to be together. They even found out, I love this, is that our brain is wired that we can handle about 150 friends. If we have more, we will not remember. So that's why on social media, you will never remember all the 5,000 friends you have. And if it's less, you have empty spots, which is the explanation, for instance, why all of a sudden people feel that this celebrity that they really love feels so close, because that celebrity just took one of the spots that are available in the 150. So communities are really everywhere, and I've been exposed to that very early as a kid. The Wiscour family originated from Burscheid, and then they went south, but like 1400s, 1500s. So that was when Luxembourg still had also the province of Luxembourg, that is now Belgium, was still Luxembourg. And after that, so at some stage, part of my family is on one side of the border and the other part is on the other side of the border. So as a kid, when I was in Luxembourg, they would say, you're a stupid Belgian. And when I would go to Arlon to see the other side of the family, they go like, you're this bragging Luxembourger. So I early on got this sense that there was this some kind of people will look in a way at other kinds of people and be judgmental. So very early on, I thought that it's not the solution to be judgmental, and it exposed me to why communities exist and they're important. And two aspects. One is, of course, the sense of belonging, so that you need that and it should be encouraged. But the other one is also to be open, so that communities, different communities, can understand each other and mesh. That doesn't mean you give up the essence of a community, but they can talk together. And that's exactly, for instance, what we have as a problem in Luxembourg, where we have you mentioned that expat and Luxembourger. What happened to me? I grew up in Bel Air, and then I'm away for 20 years. I come back during the COVID pandemics, which is the worst possible time, and it was not planned at all. And all of a sudden, I am like, there's no one there. And I felt what expats feel when they arrive. Although I had the advantage of speaking the language, it was really very, very tough. So I think it would be great if we managed to have the different communities open up more to each other, so that the Luxembourgers perhaps have a better appreciation of how the non-Luxembourgers see Luxembourg, and the others to give them clues as to how do we Luxembourgers tick, how do we function, so that there's a better understanding. And when you talk with them, you can see that there's still work to do there. And the same is true in a company, where it can be different between different entities, different affiliates, where there's a common sense that we belong in the same company. So that means there is the same vision, the same drivers, the same causes in an ideal case, of course. And that's what you want to use. But then every entity may be a sub-community and have a sub-culture and still a sense of belonging. And that doesn't mean that you have to fight against the others. It just means that we all work together with our specificities. So it's a very complex aspect, but I think better understanding it and allowing people to open up more to appreciate the other side is one of the keys to this.
Yeah, I love the angle where you say, okay, let's create and let's use communities, let's make them interact. I think that's for sure, especially in a country like Luxembourg, for sure a big challenge, where there are so many different expat communities. Now there are some of these activities which actually bring them together, but I think the most closed community in Luxembourg is the Luxembourgish community. Now, if you go beyond Luxembourg City and the cosmopolitan environment we have there, that's one of the biggest challenges I think we are facing, is that it's more felt, other communities are more felt like a threat than as an opportunity. And yeah, well, it's human in a sense. In the other logic,
and you know, when I explain it to non-Luxembourgers, to expats, I tell them you have to see the historical background as a country, but even as families, what happened here, and somehow it explains or puts into perspective. And so it's a thing. You have to help each side understand the other one, so that little by little there is this way of appreciating that the other side understands it differently.
Yeah. Well, coming back to companies, because communities in companies, it's interesting. I don't think like that. Now, I'm not very tribal, so it makes sense. But for me, and we're going back to inspiration. If we are able to inspire people who are able to inspire other ones and ready to inspire other ones, and so that everybody taps into his innate inspiration, there are no communities in a sense which have to interact. There is one environment, which for sure there are affinities, one love the other one more, and all that is still something, but they are not like these groups, the groups of the smokers who meet every day because 4 times because they go for a smoke, and then you have the ones who love coffee, and then you have the ones who go to the vegan restaurant. It's like, and you don't have that, even so they might go together, but company wise you will not have that. If the most important layer in your company is the inspiration of yourself and others, you don't have that. That's at least my dream.
I may add to that something, that when you ask in companies what the community is, what their community is, the best case you often get is, well, the customers. And then there's no realization that there's another community, which is the team, the people of the company is a community. That sense is not understood. They're the workers, they're the people delivering something and they get money for that. No, they're a community as well. They're driven by things, and you have to appreciate that. You have to appreciate that. They're not underappreciated.
Money is not enough today.
And today, even less than before.
I think that could be a closing word. Money is not enough.
Purpose. Purpose.
Purpose and connecting to your noble cause and who you are. I love that, as you know. And we drive the change of company culture.
Inspire
Pascal,
others to connect the dots so that they can drive common causes.
love it. We are down to exactly an hour. So I thank you for for the insights. Great insights here. Your vulnerability, your openness. I was not doubting it, but I'm happy that we could go there. And I hope that our listeners also found some insights and nuggets for themselves. So
Why?
thank you very much to all the listeners. Thank you to Pascal. I'm working on a thrilling ZentraCaster for May already. Yeah, for May. Hopefully, he will accept. And see you in May. Thank you, Pascal. And have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much.